Conversation with Al McFarlane. Today is Wednesday already, June 14th. Happy birthday tomorrow to my brother Ray McFarlane on June 15th. Happy birthday to everybody else who's got a June birthday. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along. As you can see, I'm operating from my home. I'm on my deck out in the back of my house, and it's a nice studio. So I hope you enjoy the environment. You hear some birds. You might hear the air conditioner running for inside. You may hear a siren or a fire truck or something like that go by. You may hear kids in the park across the street. All told, it's community, and it's really a good place to be here in North Minneapolis. As always, I want to begin by inviting you, asking you to support this program, to support this work. And the way you do that is go to our Insight News MN YouTube channel, YouTube/Insight News MN. And subscribe. Subscribe, first of all, like the program and share. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. We're on the way, but we need your help. And I'm asking you to take a minute today and go to the Insight News YouTube channel. It's at YouTube, Insight News/Insight News MN. And click on the channel, subscribe, like, and share. Get 10 of your friends to subscribe as well. And if we have that kind of multiplier impact, this thing will grow quickly, because I think what we're doing is important. For me, it's a question of having conversations with some friends of mine, people I know that I respect, that I love, and who I respect because they put so much into community, into being moms and dads and grandparents, into being, just activists in community. Teachers, educators, organizers, entrepreneurs. And my mission as a communicator is simply to have these personal, rich, robust conversations so that this private conversation between us is something that we're sharing with the entire world. And I think it's a pleasure for me to be in that position as a journalist to do that. I hope that my guests all feel that the conversations have the same value for them as well. At the end of the day, we are trying to create a sense of healing, a sense of potential, a sense of possibility, a sense of confidence, where we walk away from every moment feeling victorious, feeling that, number one, freedom, redemption is both imminent and inevitable, that freedom is at hand. We simply must act. Well, so you know what to do. Go to YouTube, Insight News MN, and subscribe to the channel, like, and share. Just so you know, you could be watching us now on any of several platforms. We're on 2 YouTube platforms, one for Insight News, one for Black Press USA, the Black Press of America. We're also on the Insight News, Black Press of America, and Al McFarlane Facebook pages. We're streaming live to LinkedIn and streaming live to Twitter. So we're doing all we can to connect with you, and we want you to be present, show up. If you're watching, connecting on any of those platforms, go to the comment section and say hello. Tell us who you are, where you are, and say hi. If you got something you want to add to the conversation, we invite and we welcome that. I'm going to start off with, first of all, before I do that, we want to thank our friends over at the Minnesota Department of Health for the work they're doing around keeping us aware about COVID-19. And in fact, there's a community COVID-19 vaccination event. Oh, there we go. This might be the monthly test. I'm not sure. The free vaccine for ages 6 to 9 months and older, $50 gift cards for each dose or booster given, free COVID take-home test. You can just walk in. You can make appointments as well. This is tomorrow, June 15th, at the Highwood Hills Recreation Center at 2192 London Lane East in St. Paul. There's a number you can call for information, 651-366-0279. Be aware. And even though the pandemic has been declared over, we know dangers exist, and we owe it to each other to be mindful and to protect ourselves, our families, and our community. Well, hey, Michelle, thank you for, as always, being here. Michelle is a regular viewer and supporter of the program. We thank you so much. So let me do this. We'll start with a couple of hot topics, things I've been checking out. I want you to check them out as well. Number one, we talk about books all the time, and we have a story by Maya Pottinger from Word in Black. It's in the June 13th posted on our website, insightnews.com. And the headline says, "Why We Need Diverse Books in School." Beautiful picture of multi-ethnic students there. And I'll just read a couple paragraphs, but I want to put this on your mind. But think about what it means for us to be literate and to use books. Um, and the reason this is important is because the people in the social structure who are against our development want to ban books. So we have to be aware and really think about what books mean to us and how we protect our right, our access to books. Well, she writes, ever since he was young, Marchant Davis has always loved children's media and the power it possesses. Though his favorites were Sesame Street and Reading Rainbow, especially seeing himself represented on the screen through LeVar Burton, he says he was strangely inspired by Snow White. Okay, interesting. He was always playing on TV, says Davis, who's an actor, director, writer, and now author of A Boy in His Mirror. And it was this story that he wanted to repurpose for his own children's book toward the current generation, thinking about that relationship that kids have with their phones and about what identity means. Davis said he wanted to create a story that spoke to people coming up in the world with TikTok, with Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat. But mostly, he wrote this book hoping that young Black boys would read it, though he doesn't believe in any one thing that can cure all the problems. He wants this book to be a step towards boys acknowledging their feelings and countering some of the toxic masculinity in the Black community. And so the story goes on. It's a good read. It's in Insight. It's on insightnews.com, written by Maya Pottinger for Word in Black. The other one leads us into our program today as well, but it's an important one, also at insightnews.com. And before I say that, I want to remind people of another important event tomorrow, Thursday, June 15th. There's going to be a Juneteenth Jubilee at the state capitol. That's organized by our own President of the Senate, Senator Bobby Joe Champion, and his colleagues in the African American or Black caucus in the House and the Senate. And it's going to be a big event, a lot of people, the right place. And, you know, Juneteenth is a holiday. This is the first annual Juneteenth Jubilee on the state capitol fairgrounds tomorrow from 12 to 4. Drop in, check it out, tell your friends, show up. Well, my next hot topic is one also in Inside News. Our columnist, Chuck Hobbs, wrote in memory of Medgar Evers. And I'll just read a couple of paragraphs of it. It says, during the Civil Rights Movement, Mississippi NAACP Field Secretary Medgar Evers was widely considered public enemy number one for the Ku Klux Klan and the white citizens councils that opposed his efforts to register Black Mississippi residents to vote. Born in Decatur, Mississippi on July 2, 1925, Evers attended segregated public schools, and after graduating from high school, he enlisted in the U.S. Army, where he eventually rose to the rank of sergeant, fighting Nazi tyranny in the European theater during World War II. He returned from the war, enrolled at Alcorn A&M, which is now Alcorn State University, which is an HBCU in Wilmer, Mississippi. During his senior year in college, he applied for a seat in the entering class of the University of Mississippi Law School, but was denied admission. Undaunted, he began selling life insurance and was named the field secretary for the NAACP in 1954. Well, you all know the story of his death, his murder by a bomb placed at his home. So you read the story, think about Medgar Evers, and think about all of those heroes and sheroes who have given their lives to pursue civil and human rights for our people and for everybody. Medgar Evers, and I was telling my producer before the show that I had the fortune to host Mrs. Medgar Evers, Merle Evers, along with Martin King III at an event here in my home in North Minneapolis some years back when they were in town doing a NAACP event, much like we're talking about today. We were fortunate and pleased to be able to invite them into our home. And she asked me, how were they? Down to earth, King III, high energy, passionate, humble, but just a great presence and personality. And Merle Evers, I said, was a woman that reflected dignity. purpose, courage, and a certain audacity for her ability to keep moving forward despite the terrible price she and her family paid with the murder of her husband, Medgar Evers. Well, I'll stop with that and get into today's program because this is connected. We're talking today with my friends from the St. Paul St. Paul NAACP, who are going to be hosting their annual Freedom Fund dinner. Nieeta Presley is here. Nieeta, good to see you. Come on in. The Freedom Fund Gala happens, and you're invited to it. Let's see, the June 17th. June
Yes.
17th, 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. is when doors open. Social hour 6 to 7, dinner 7 p.m. Program and awards 7:30 p.m. And we'll learn more about that. Nieeta, welcome, my friend. How are you? Good to see you.
Thank you. It's so good to see you too, Al. Thank you for the invite.
Well, thank you. So take a minute and introduce your colleague, the pastor, and talk about what you all have planned for our community.
Well, along with me is the wonderful and great Reverend Dr. Richard Pittman Sr., who is our president of the NAACP St. Paul branch. He is along with me to talk about this wonderful event and talk about the NAACP.
Dr. Pittman, welcome to the program. So good to meet you. Good to see you.
Good seeing you also, and thank you, Nieeta, for such a gracious introduction.
So here's what I want to do. That's why I was glad to have that piece on Medgar Evers. So I think we should always talk about the grand vision, the grand work, the great history, but also the future that compels us to stay engaged and to keep working, keep fighting, keep moving, and to do it with a sense of imminent victory at every step. So, Pastor, let me have you just do, if you would, from your point of view, NAACP 101. When you think about the organization, how do you describe it to somebody who might not be familiar with all of the history of the organization, what it's meant for our people and for our country?
Absolutely. One of the things we're marking this year is our 110th year anniversary for the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. We've been working on so many things and initiatives to try to fight the injustices that in a Black marginalized society. And introducing the NAACP, we deal with all areas of systemic racism, fighting and promoting the advancement of all those that have been displaced or have been affected by racism or treated indifferently because of the color of their skin. And NAACP is a supporter of those of the disadvantages, and we advocate for people that can't necessarily advocate for themselves. And so we fight in order to make sure that systemic changes will happen within the system. And they're so far and many and so deeply embedded that we try to peel back the layers in order to find success for our communities, for our young people, building future leaders, giving them a promise of tomorrow. And one of my favorite sayings from Martin Luther King is that real peace is not the absence of pressure or absence of tension, but the presence of justice. And one of the things that we must strive and continue to strive for, and I heard you mention the removing of literature in the libraries, and something that we must really be careful of because we don't want to remove history, a real history of what America possessed when it comes to people of color, Black people. Our children need to know the history, and we don't need to remove or hide some of the things, as you mentioned, Medgar Evers. some of the things and the great works that many of our matriarchs have done in our society. And so NAACP, we are working hard to continue to fight, to continue to uplift, make policy changes, get into the legislature, not just standing in front of a camera, but just simply getting in behind closed doors where decisions are being made about the people that we represent. And so that's just a piece of what the NAACP and the long history of, and the many fights that we have uh, forwarded and fronted for the people of color.
Pastor Pittman and Nieeta, let's do this too. We got about a good 45 minutes. As many times as you can, mention the events coming up so we burn that into the public's mind, right? Mm-hmm. And we'll have that be the punctuation for this conversation, because we're going to say some good things, some important things. I'm going to ask you all some questions that I think you appreciate the ask, and I will appreciate the answer, because I'm going to ask for your personal story, but put it all in context, because we're here today for a reason. That's to promote the annual Freedom Fund dinner. So
yes,
let me have you start, Pastor Pittman, make the promotion pitch right now, and then we'll keep going from there.
Well, with the many challenges that we are facing as a community, we know some of the biggest challenges after the pandemic is the uptick in crime in our communities. And we want to look towards our youth, because youth seem to be struggling at a higher percentage rate more than ever. And our youth are struggling. We know of violence, crimes, robbery, home invasions, school, kids not able to go to school, and to be able to go get education without the fear of threat or violence. And one of the things I want to mention, since you said bring some important issues up, our Freedom Fund is surrounded around our youth. The challenges, the topic, and I know Nieeta's going to talk about it a lot more, but the challenges is real, the hope for our youth, and we're looking at ways that we can strategize to come up with ideals in order to empower our youth, bring back positivity, help them to begin to dream again and realize that there is hope for tomorrow. Life does not have to end at an early age, but that they can continue to strive and to become productive citizens, and dream of places that they can be, dream of themselves in higher places, higher education, higher career choices, and be productive citizens that are going to be running our country tomorrow. So we want to continue to encourage that and strengthen that through this gala. We just want to encourage everybody, if you don't already have a ticket, if you have not already bought a table or helped sponsor this event, you don't want to miss this event. Truly, last year was a great success, and many people in the community came. But we see here, this year is very important, more so than ever. People are working very hard, and we have community leaders that are coming out, that are coming to share their ideals and strategies on how we can better serve our youth in our community. We understand that they're disadvantaged. One of the things I like to mention, just as an encouragement, we were just in a press conference on last week with John Choi, St. Paul Police, Royalville Police, and many others, talking about non-public safety stops, non-safety public stops, where if it's not something where you're speeding while you know you're going to be pulled over for speeding, or it's not a threat to the community, the policies of St. Paul, Roseville, and Maplewood is now coming on, are changing now, where you're not going to get pulled over for tint on your windows, for air fresheners in your windows, for out tail light or expired plates. Now you'll receive a letter in the mail with a certificate telling you where to go to get your tail light fixed. Mm-hmm. Not being pulled over for tinted windows, or having an air freshener or a cross hanging from your rearview mirror, because those were taking a lot of the taxpayers' money in order for them to police those kind of stops, which economically challenged our community. If you have a single mother gets put over for out tail light, and now here she gets paid and she has rent to pay, and now she has to decide whether to pay this ticket or go get her tail light fixed. And then if she doesn't pay the ticket, then she incurs fees and suspended licenses. And so it sends in a spiral effect at how we affect the community. So in light of trying to bring back community togetherness between police officers and the community, I think is a great deal. And we want to spread the information as much as possible that in St. Paul, we don't have to worry about that threat anymore, being pulled over for minor non-public safety traffic stops, where basically what was happening, it was opportunity to search people's cars or try to find something illegal. And all the way back to Flanders Castile, he was pulled over because the officer said he looked like the individual because he had a wide nose. Like, how many black people don't have wider noses? You know, and he looked like the individual that robbed a gas station a few days ago. And he ended up losing his life in a simple non-public safety stop because he looked like somebody. And it was not, and he was shot dead in his car in broad daylight. And so these are the type of things that we are worried about. Go back to Dante Wright, put over because the reason was there was an air freshener in his middle of his window. So these are things that this Freedom Fund banquet is entailing more than just the youth, but ways for our community to be more safe, us to come together. And it's just going to be a time for us to come together, people that work hard every day in the community in order to stop the violence and to just encourage.
Yeah, I think we're locked. Is frozen for a second. Nieeta, let me come to you while we're getting this machine recycled there. So add on to that, before you do, let me throw something into the conversation that I'm disturbed about, and I'm sure you are, but you can maybe shed some light on it. In the news a couple of days ago, at the graduation for St. Paul Central, I think it was at the Roy Wilkins Center in downtown St. Paul, the news report said that some 200 to 300 young people showed up late during the commencement ceremony and created a disturbance. What do you know about that? What happened, and what do we do about that?
Unfortunately, I had not heard that. And again, that is just so sad to hear some really auspicious occasion and honoring the work of our young people has to have this added distraction, and this distraction be of violence. And what I think about it without even really knowing a lot about it, it really hurts my heart to know that our kids are scared to go to school. They're scared to congregate together. Parents, caregivers, teachers are feeling the same angst and anxiety. And then to have something that our young people look forward to after being in school for 13 years, that they actually are hitting the first milestone in their lives of achievement to get that diploma, to get that high school diploma. So I'm hearing this news. My heart is heavy to hear that, because most of the times, from what I can tell with young people, the things they're having these big arguments and scuffles over are so minor, just so minor, that it's unfortunate that our young people aren't thinking now and living tomorrow.
And so, in a sense, that's guiding this particular Freedom Fund, right? Focusing on young people. Talk about that. What do you see as the role of the St. Paul NAACP and the role of our community in creating that bridge, that connectedness, in elevating our appreciation and our high expectations of all of our young people, and trying to present with them or to them a sense of continuity, that what they are going through is what we went through. Everything is variation on the theme, but our common mission has been freedom, and the recognition of our humanity, and our common mission has been self-realization for every individual, so that she or he could emerge in life as their authentic self, clear on their potential, and aiming for it, and intending to fulfill their destiny. So what are you doing now to help that come to pass more in our community? And what have you done historically at the NAACP?
Well, the NAACP is, first of all, an organization, one of the oldest civil rights organization in this country. And in fact, our own particular St. Paul NAACP has been touted to be one of the oldest in the country. The NAACP, just historically, has been engaging with young people and ensuring and making sure that young people are involved, and that they're given voice, and that they have the opportunity to be active participants in their own journeys, in their own livelihoods, in the ways that they are achieving their goals. So just moving up to today, I mean, I'm looking at, and remembering some of the activisms by our young people that have been actual members of the NAACP just over the years. And one comes to mind that we all know is Debbie Montgomery, who was a very, very active young person in the NAACP when she was extremely young, who went to the civil rights movement and activities in the South. So our young people aren't as active, I feel like, now. So that's why for the NAACP today, it's very important that we do intentional work around getting our young people involved. And I think some of the ways that we are envisioning from this Freedom Fund Gala is to create a framework and an initiative as a launching point from this gala to actually, again, as I said, do some intentional work with our young people in the community, but not only our young people, but to join forces with organizations that are already doing the work, doing the heavy lifting, and working with our young people. And that includes the educational system, whether it's the St. Paul public school system or it's the charter school system, to really look and see how we can partner and work together. And I take that working together very seriously. So we're hoping with the gala, we'll bring some highlights and to bring some more interest to really begin to see how we can work together. I'd say the village is still needed.
Yep.
And so we have to look and love on our kids. This gala, we're trying to really highlight young people, really lift them up. And in fact, if you come and you're there, you're going to see young people in action that are really trying to do their best. They are really trying to see that they are human and that they are important and that they have a voice. And I don't want to negate that. I don't want to negate the good people or the young people that are doing good things. And I don't want to, have all this gloom and doom, because our young people are doing good things. And you'll see that at this gala. But the fact is, what gets in the news a lot are the kids that maybe have just sort of wandered off the path, and they just need some guidance to help them get back on track. And our young people need to know that they're loved, that they're worthy, and that there is another side to the coin. So we're hoping that at the gala tonight, not tonight, on Saturday, that people will be encouraged to work with the NAACP by getting involved, by volunteering, by joining the members, our membership, because the more voices, the more collective voices, the more collectiveness and collaboration that we can have amongst our people and the community and others, the better chance that we can get results and see results.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. My guest, Dr. Pastor Richard Pittman, who is the chair of the St. Paul NAACP, and Nieeta Presley, vice chair of the St. Paul NAACP. We're talking about the Freedom Fund Gala coming up this weekend. Pastor Pittman, let me come back to you and ask you to sort of tell your civil rights story. What's your personal story, your personal family story? I think the question comes from my own experience, where I know when I became involved and how I got involved and who around me, my mom or granddad, what their engagement was. And I'm figuring most of our stories are somewhat similar. But what is your story about coming into both awareness and into the arena of activity around civil and human rights?
Yes, I have a long history that goes back all the way to my grandfather down in Mississippi, Money, Mississippi, Grenada, Mississippi, where actually the story at Emmett Till, the house that my grandfather was a great friend to the pastor that was related to Emmett Till, where he was snatched out of the house. Actually, that was my mom's childhood home, where she lived there. She was born in that house. And my grandfather actually built that house. And so the history goes way back to then. My family has been active. We have over, I think, 8 churches here just in the city that our family pastor from different ones of the different family members. And also we have over 65 preachers in our family. That's not including missionaries and people that have been active in the church for a long time. But we have a long history. Reverend Walter, Dr. Reverend Walter Battle migrated from Mississippi here to Minnesota, was the first Black African-American to graduate from North Central Bible College under President Lindstrom. He came from Mississippi. He said, could I go to this college? And they said he could. And he was the first African-American to graduate from that institution. My history on both the battle side.
Talk more about your family. Your granddad was one of the giants.
Yes.
Community, but talk about that whole family. Just that's interesting information.
Yes, family. Dr. Thelma Buckner, Bob Battle now is only 2 siblings left alive is my mother Luella Pittman, and Robert Battle, that pastors Berean Church over there right across the street from the Capitol off University Avenue near the Sears building. He's still pastoring the Berean Church. The family Gospel Temple, Battle Temple now, which is pastored by my cousin, Dr. Dwight Buckner, is currently pastoring that church. And then there's the House of Refuge, Dr. Willa Battle over in Minneapolis, the House of Refuge right off the bridge up. You can see it from the 35W bridge over there in South Minneapolis. And there's many more churches that we have here, from Free at Last to Deliverance Temple to United. Several other churches that we've all have a long history of working in the community, providing stewardship towards youth. My uncle ran a camp up in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, a lodge where we took the youth every summer, and I was a participant of that, where we were taught how to build baskets and how to garden and how to raise our own food and how to build docks, go in the woods, cut trees down, and actually build a dock in the river. And so we have a long history. My family comes from a long legacy of civil rights and fighting for the rights of the community. Always in the public eye as far as civil servants, whether it be in the political or in the religious world. We've always been civil servants. On my wife's side of the family, the Ransoms, uh, really kind of introduced me to the NAACP. I've been with the NAACP over 12 years now. And I served first as the religious chair, and then as the public safety chair, then as vice president, and now currently serving as the president of the St. Paul branch. And I tell you that it's been a work in progress just because of the things that, as a pastor, I've buried many individuals. And like Nieeta said, we don't always want to talk about the negative things because there's so many. I've mentored so many youth that have gone on to college and become productive citizens. But just the events that take place, watching young people and having to do their eulogies, is just been concerning for me. And some of the things that we are fighting for in the community, we've been fighting for over the last 3 years, is agreement between the St. Paul Police Department and the NAACP. We ratified some of the agreement because when it first came out 20 years ago, and it was investigated by the Justice Department, and this is all about the complaints of our community and whether they were being heard or answered. We have an organization called the PCR, that Public Review Board, that gets the complaints of people that feel they've been mistreated or marginalized within the community. And we want to make sure that people of color are being treated fairly. And so we worked hard to try to establish these policies and rules. 20 years ago, there was no such thing as a body camera, facial recognition, and those different things that sometimes can cause our community to be affected in an adverse way. And so we are working diligently, continually. We meet with the chief of police every other month, and sometimes twice in a month. He'll come to us, to the NAACP, in order to get numbers, documentation of what's going on. And one thing that has been alarming to me, just our education gap. Education gap between our people of color came in the lowest in the United States, here in Minnesota.
Mm.
And for us, the African American people, to only make up 16% of the population of Minnesota, make up 16%, but yet we are more affected by almost 60% of crime, traffic stops, education gap, the achievement gap of education, unable to graduate. Not, and some that are graduated still not graduated at a 12th grade level. They're reading at an 8th grade level. And so we don't want our kids rushed to school. We want our kids educated. We just don't want to be pushed by the side. And so these are some of the things that have just lit the fire in me. And just working on the East Side community, I've been pastoring for going on 28 years on the East Side community over off Maryland and Greenbrier. And I've been serving the community for a long time. And just the youth on the East Side, if you frequent the East Side or been over there, there's a lot of work on the East Side of St. Paul. And a lot of parents, a lot of children need help. But, I see a great future in our young people. We have some of the most intelligent, brightest, creative kids in any race.
Mm-hmm.
And you see it in everything. You see it in music. You see it in fashion. You see, it's the way they walk and talk. Other races of children try to emulate them.
That's right.
Because we're leaders, and I think sometimes our kids need to be educated to the fact that we're not just a footstool, but we are the inventors and the creators.
Mm-hmm.
We are the builders. There's so many things in history that come from a black man. First heart surgery, black man. The sole on the bottom of your shoe, a black man. Refined sugar, a black man. There's so many history things that if our young people understood who they were and how powerful they were and where they come from, to understand their legacy, when you go all the way to Black Wall Street, and now, another thing that keeps me in this fight, I don't get paid to do what I do. I do it out of passion, because I know sometimes we live in a Marxist society where people try to get rich off the problem of black people.
Mm-hmm.
But you go back to all the way back Black Wall Street. You have W.D. Du Bois that he was a part of the NAACP in the beginning, and he used
Mm-hmm.
that we should fight for justice and civil rights. But then there was, I'm getting his name, if you'd help me, Booker T. Washington. Booker T.
Mm-hmm.
Washington, he believed that our children should be taught a trade. We should be owners of our banks, owner of our businesses, have a trade of talent. So if you teach them how to own, you'll never have to teach them how to fish again. You can lead them to the water, but if you allow them to learn, and we understand the history of Black Wall Street and what happened there, but that fight still continues here today. We still have to let our young people know they have ownership of who they are and what they can become, and nobody can stop them. And sometimes we got to fight a little harder, and that's what this banquet is all about, to show the positivity, the progressive young Black men and women that we have that are coming up, that are doing great things in community and society, and that are going to lead our communities into a great future. And we want to empower that, and we want to add to those numbers of the positivity of the young people that we have. And I mean, that's just some of the stuff. It's just so much stuff, but
Sure.
these are things that keeps me on fire
Sure.
to continue to work for civil rights. And I don't have to have a paycheck to do this. I do this for the passion, because I want my grandkids' future to be great. I want my kids' future to be great. And I want other people's families and kids to be great. I want to see them walk around and be able to feel like I am somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I am somebody. I am important. That I'm worth living past 18.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be 25. Now it's 18, 20, 21. I hear so many young people, I don't think I'm going to live past that. But we have to restore. We have to restore the mindset that we are a community, they're loved, and that we have mentors out here that are willing to work with them in order to progress them into the future.
And yeah, I think one of the things we have to change is this idea that my life will end at 18 or 20 or 25, that we replace that with the idea of what will I have accomplished when I'm 100?
Right.
What will I have gotten done? And to have
Absolutely.
things to
Right.
do that carry you into your centenary and be always about the business, right?
Yes.
So, Nieeta, let me ask you the same question. You've been active in the community forever and forever. And just with respect and appreciation and gratitude, I want you to take a minute and talk about your involvement, what brings you to the NAACP in particular, but to the human rights and civil rights struggle in general, and talk about your history in community building, economic development, organizing, taking care of our people, and challenging the power on behalf of our people. Tell me your story, a part of it, as you can, in a few minutes.
Okay, I just want to add a little more, though, to looking at our young people.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I would like to start doing, first of all, is talking about young people's being Black excellence.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I really think we need to stop trying to have not only our young people, but just Black people in general. We got to stop measuring ourselves to mainstream, to the white population, because we have Black excellence.
Right.
We have Black people, Black kids achieving on a big scale. So if we could get into our children's minds that there is good or better than being measured on white standards. I just want to throw that out there, because
that's a good
it's
point.
It's a personal angst of mine.
Well, let me
we have to really start telling our kids, you don't have to be measured by the white standards.
Right.
Right.
Let me second that with this. That speaks to the reason I'm in the business I'm in, communication, right? My job is to tell our story to our people, right? And my job is to not promote that we have to measure ourselves against anyone else. We simply have to measure ourselves against our own potential, against our legacy, and measure ourselves against the promise of the future. And then we have to use our imagination, our knowledge, our desire, our fear even, to drive a pathway to a future in which we win.
Yes.
And the we winning for us is not that it requires somebody else to lose.
Mm-hmm.
It simply
Mm-hmm.
requires us to win, right?
Right.
Exactly.
And we can win
Exactly.
in a way where everybody wins.
That's right.
That's the
Yes.
difference, right? We're not
Yes.
exclusive. We are inclusive in our general orientation. And
Mm-hmm.
when we stand for good for ourselves, we're standing for good for humanity itself,
It, it,
good for the environment, good for the ecosystem, good for the earth, the planet, So, but the key for me, sort of validating what you just said, is that I'm hoping that we will also recognize and engage the institutions in our community,
yes.
institutions like the NAACP,
Yes.
institutions like Insight News, and
Yes.
other organizations and vehicles and banks and businesses that we own, that we can serve each other through, and in the process create
Yes.
home ownership and wealth and capability in our people, in our community. And you've been on the front line in wealth creation, home ownership, among other
Mhm.
things.
Yes. Well, my journey really begins after I became an adult, after the fiasco of I-94 in the Rondo community.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up, at first, I didn't know what the impacts of that freeway had on our community through injustice and racism, redlining, and all of the above that really destroyed a really beautiful and wonderful, and I will call it a Wall Street. I
Mm-hmm.
will call it a Rosewood, because it was a center of e-commerce, a center of economic um, prosperity, and it just got destroyed with that I-94. And so when I got older and I learned the stories of my elders and what it did to my grandfather who owned a business, what it did to my uncles and aunts and my mother's parents who got their houses taken from them, destroyed, their generational wealth just stripped from them by
Mm-hmm.
having no choice in the matter. So when I got older and I learned that story, that set me on fire. That I said, my work is in the community. That's number one. And it's doing whatever I can to uplift historic people from Rondo, but also African Americans in general, to really be on the path that would create economic opportunity, um, wealth creation, home ownership, and for them to really be politically educated. Because one of the things that I always say or said, that cities and people and neighborhoods are being planned and
Mm-hmm.
zoned out of their own existence. And so it was really important for me to get involved on the city level by, joining the hero board, getting on the planning commission, being involved in when the new light rail was coming down University, because people just didn't realize that, while you're thinking about feeding your kids or paying the bills, there's folk, the higher level, really planning to displace you. They're causing a lot of your strife, just through policy, through, again, redlining to me is still alive and well. They're doing it in other ways. So it just, once I learned my history from the Rondo community, again, like I said, that set me on fire, and it just became my passion, and it became my professional uh, work, that I would do any and everything to make sure that we'll use this term equity, which I'm using that word lightly because equity has its issues too. But
Mm-hmm.
how about liberation?
Liberation.
for our people.
What about your family? Take a minute and talk about your grands and your parents, the contributions they have made and where they came from.
Well, my father's family came from Arkansas, from a little town in Arkansas. There, my dad's oldest brother saw opportunities in the north, part of the Great Migration, that there was opportunities in the north versus the south. So my uncle was actually my brother's oldest brother, was the first relative that actually came to St. Paul, Minnesota, and settled in St. Paul. And he was able to purchase a house. And this house it was right on Rondo and Dale. And it was like in today's terms, we call mixed use property. So there was housing, there was commercial, all in one place. And he owned the grocery store. My grandfather was an electrician by trade and by then certified, but he wasn't able to get a job in his field. So he opened up a little fix-it shop right in this little complex. And he fixed everybody's lamps or TVs or irons in order to supplement his income, because one of the reasons people came to St. Paul was the railroads, was transportation. And so many of my uncles, and including my grandfather, worked on the railroads. My uncle, who I just talked about, that came here first, he got his job on the railroad as what these men were called red caps. And the red caps were the people that carried the luggage for folk traveling on the trains. But he was smart enough to know that you needed to own your stuff. And so he bought that building and was able to buy that building. And he encouraged other family members to come north. And like I said, many of his brothers, my dad's brothers, which, are his brothers, worked on that railroad. My dad did not work on the railroad, but most of his siblings did, and my grandfather as well. So, and then with the freeway coming through and our people not being able to practice their crafts or their professions, because we had lawyers, we had doctors, we have dentists, weren't able to practice in the mainstream. So where did they practice? Right in our own community. And again, our community was self-contained and it could take care of itself. And definitely the resources were of that circular economy. So it circled within our community the way that it should in order to support it. And then as I got older, I actually learned my first civic engagement and organizing through the late and great Kofi Bobby Hickman, which he at that time was one of our key advocates as I became a young woman. And I learned under his tutelage about finding your voice and really getting out there and organizing for your rights. So I remember back then when I was a young woman, there was a case where a person in our neighborhood, a young guy in our neighborhood, got accused of raping a Caucasian woman. He was going to college. And that was my first activity around civil rights. And again, Bobby Hickman had us out there protesting that unjust accusation. So that was my first encounter in really getting involved in the community. And then I had, known about the NAACP, but not really having the history of such a great organization until as I began to learn about my own Black history, because we know it wasn't taught in school.
Mhm.
I never learned a lot about the greatness of Black people, but it was through the NAACP that was my first encounter and learning about that, this great organization and the work
Well,
that
let's take a minute and invite people again to the event this Saturday. The time goes so quickly, we're out of time, but we don't want to end without extending one more invitation for the 110th uh, St. Paul Branch NAACP Freedom Fund Gala. Nieeta?
Yes, we want you there. This gala, the committee really was very intentional about the theme that we really want to uplift our young people and to do whatever we can to make their lives better and to bring them into the fold. So come to the gala on Saturday. We have a panel list of community leaders such as Chantel Allen, Eliza Darius. We have Superintendent Teresa Battle. We have not Reverend, Dr.
Valerie Little.
Valerie
Yeah.
Littles Butler.
Mhm.
They are our panelists. And then we have a sharp young man. His name is Darian Lofton, who is going to be part of that panelist. So we'll get a young person's voice. A young
Awesome.
person will talk
Listen,
about his
we got to
struggle.
close it right there. Listen, but you have the message. You who are listening, thank you so much. Last thing I want to remind people that tomorrow at the state capitol, there's an event being hosted by the Minnesota Council for on African Heritage. It's the first annual Juneteenth Jubilee at the state capitol fairgrounds. It's tomorrow from noon to 4. So be there as well. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.